we got a couple asking how the portfolio is doing overall. First of all, say over the last 5 years, how has the portfolio grown in cash value? Has the net number of partners grown in the last 5 years? And then also in the last year, how has it been doing?
Sure, absolutely. So we have been raising a bit of capital. Specifically over the last 3 months, we've started raising some capital. We've had a lot of interest because obviously we're in a value fund. There's a lot of volatility. Our strategies are going to execute quite well. And for anybody who's really interested in an in-depth discussion on all this, I strongly encourage you, if you have not, go and look at the annual reports. They're on our website, petersonfunds.com. I mean, I write like, they're really extensive, and we kind of talk about all of this type of information. So over the last 5 years, we've kind of been flattish and volatile. And it's, you know, it's not that fun for me to be flat and volatile, but we own incredible businesses. So it's not that big of a burden. I mean, I prefer to always be up and to the right. That's not always possible. Value in itself, by the way, and this is just factual details, but the value industry has been really flat or even down for about 5 years. So if you look back over maybe a 75 or 100-year time horizon, and really 75, because there wasn't a whole lot of value idea back then, but value has tended to outperform growth and all of these other sectors on like a 10-year rolling basis in all of them, except for this past period in time. So, you know, what we have now is I don't want to comment too much. You know, we're kind of living in an environment where there's this like narrative approach to a lot of these companies. So there's a lot of similarities to things that I was seeing back in sort of the late 90s, where there's a really good narrative, a really good story around a new business, and it tends to get pretty large. It might not have all of the fundamentals in place, but there's enough people and enough time has passed that people have sort of forgotten that jump on board. And so it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy for a period of time. And then we'll kind of see what happens. But, you know, value is based on what something's worth. And that value is based on a discount of all of the future earnings of the business that's going to be paid out to the owners. So ultimately, the price will be reflected by the value. So so our holdings are growing in value. I'll give you a really, again, I don't want to go through like our whole book, but Dando Holdings is a totally great example. So in 2015, we had a 40% position in Dando, which is such an incredible, diversified, you know, their firm. It's actually gives us access to this. So it's run by Manish Babrai. It's a very special thing that we were able to buy 3% of this firm. It's actually a private firm, so we had to do a private agreement, and we bought 3% of the company. And inside of the company, which is you know, has a very low price. It's like $30 million in book value, and we hold it at book value because that's what our accountants require us to hold it at. There's a $100 million hedge fund focused on India. So Manish is running this hedge fund inside of Dando, and inside of our fund, we own 3% of his fund. We're not invested in his fund, we own his fund. It's such a big deal. And the book value of a hedge fund is basically zero. I mean, there's maybe a computer or something. So we hold Manish's hedge fund in our hedge fund at zero. And I mean, we don't hold that at zero. We actually bought it for $10 a share, and we've been receiving distributions, and it still makes up a 15% position in our portfolio, but it's been totally flat. It's actually down. It's down probably 5% over 5 years or so. And it's very exciting that we own it, and it doesn't bother me. I hope it shouldn't bother you. If you really understand what's going on, it won't bother you, because we have this position that is basically worth so much more than we're holding it for on our books. And at some point, this Indian focused hedge fund is going to pay us a huge payout, and it'll lift the whole portfolio, or lift the book value. So over the last 5 years, pretty flat. A lot of value has been flat. I want it to grow, but it's been flat. I think we're in a new environment. The last 5 years has been a tough environment. Was there a third question? We've been picking up some new LPs. I will actually make one quick comment. I'm actually so pleased, because I have so many friends that are in the fund management business. And, we have about 40 or so LPs, limited partners. When we went down during March, or for, H1, a lot of other funds started receiving redemptions. A lot of them got, actually a few of them closed. And that's awful. And it's totally the wrong time, but you can't do anything about it. We actually, initially we received only one request for a redemption. We had one LP that had a family member that was overseas and needed to get a little bit of cash. We made that happen very quickly, sent over a few $1,000s. And then we have one outstanding request for redemption. It's so pleasing to me that our LPs, have these long-term views.
So this one's a follow-up on something I asked earlier, which is, you mentioned that the portfolio was down in the beginning of the year and now it's gone back up. Can you give us the fund's year-to-date performance? How are we doing?
Oh yeah, we're still down a little bit. Look, I actually don't track on it. So sometimes people ask in the middle of the quarter, and it's a really strange question, because it's like, well, we own Dando and I don't have any information from Dando yet. We own Talus and I don't have any information in Talus yet. So it's more like I have to estimate things, but because of this meeting and stuff, I actually took the time to figure it out. So I think, we're down. And then, by the way, things move every day. So I actually didn't look on Friday, if that makes a difference to anyone, but I think we're probably down 5-6% for the year. And, that's fine. I really focus on the businesses, but I understand that it's people's money and savings. And of course we're growing that, but the most important thing is that the businesses are really growing. And so I think we're down probably 5 or 6%, somewhere in the mid single digits for the year. And we have a lot of the year left, so we'll see what happens. In fact, the strangest calls because there's so many LPs on here and I can just do it generically, I will tell you the strangest calls I get from people are like, hey, how are we doing? Or like, what's the performance? I'm like, we're not changing anything. Like, Daily Journal does what it does based on the human participants in the market. So we can sort of check or tell you a number, but to be excited or disappointed over some sort of movement in price is not, it doesn't add any value. It's more just focusing on like a 2 or 3 year period and making sure we're going in the right directions and have our focus on great businesses. But yeah, I think so. We're down a little bit. Sorry, Danielle, I keep interrupting as you start to talk.
No, not at all. The LP who asked that question wanted me to tell you that he is super optimistic and a huge supporter. So very excited.